Good morning, YouTube. How are you guys doing? As you saw by the title, we're going to go over how I make my training blocks, my training routine. We're going to talk about my next training block. So pretty much, we'll talk about today. Just got back from the gym. It's like 7:30, so the strength block kind of also deloading a little bit today. My workouts are like 20-30 minutes. So I'm finishing off pretty much a 4-week strength block or resensitization phase. So pretty much what I do for 4 weeks after like 12 weeks of hypertrophy training. So training in the 6 to 20 rep range, probably 8 to 20 rep range for a pretty high amount of total sets. After 12 weeks of that kind of training, then you want to resensitize your body, because kind of like how we respond to caffeine, most systems in the body as well, caffeine. Once you first have a little bit of caffeine, you're really sensitive to it, so you get amped. You really feel that response. But over time, as you keep being exposed to caffeine, your body builds up a tolerance to it, and then you need more to get that same response. Volume is kind of the same, and at a certain point, it's like, do I really want to get the maybe negative effects that are associated with a really, really high intake of caffeine or training volume when the returns are a lot lower, as opposed to just taking a period to resensitize? So that's what a resensitization or strength block is, and that's why I do a 4-week block of that after 12 weeks of hypertrophy training. Resensitizing my body to the stimulus of high volume training, so those future training blocks will be more fruitful. So that's what I'm finishing up right now, and just like you guys or anyone who I guess trains consistently, hate deloads, not the biggest fan of these strength phases. So I'm very excited tomorrow to return to high volume training and also start this new training block, which took me some time to write that up, but I made it prettier on this big piece of paper. Also today is my birthday, so 26. But we're gonna go over this and just kind of the things that I'm focusing on, and I'll talk about a little bit of things that influence the way that I do my training blocks. So training block is pretty much like a couple of mesocycles put together of training. So a mesocycle is like 4 to 8 weeks of training. So for me, I do a mesocycle of hypertrophy training, so 6 weeks I do deload, then 6 weeks of hypertrophy training again, so it's a second mesocycle. That third mesocycle is my resensitization mesocycle. So once I finish that up, those 3 things to me called a block. For me, I put those all the same exercises. So I take it from the first hypertrophy mesocycle, I adjust the rep ranges in the second mesocycle, just bring them down a little bit. And then in that third one, I take it out of the hypertrophy ranges, which is tends to be agreed upon to be like 8 to 20 reps, maybe 6 to 20. I try to pull my rep ranges for the most part out of there to allow myself to resensitize, maybe bring my set volume down a little bit as well. So, gonna talk about how I go about selecting my exercises. So, well, that would probably be the last thing, but something that's influencing the way I do my training. So there's frequency. Some things to play into is frequency, your total set volume, and your exercise selection. So for me, I go for a relatively high amount of frequency. There was a pretty recent meta-analysis that was really, really well written, really informative, made by James Krieger. I think it's called his Volume Bible. The TLDR of that is pretty much that Mike Israetel, another person I hold very highly from Renaissance Periodization, he was saying that there's like a total weekly amount of sets per muscle group that we can recover from, called your maximum recoverable volume. So you don't really want to go over that number for the week, say 24 sets. So if you go over 26, your body's not going to be able to fully recover, and then probably the next time you do, like, say you bench press 3 times a week, for the next week, you're probably not going to be able to hit that same amount of weight that you could hit last week because you're not fully recovered, let alone you're reaching, recovery is getting to your past performance, and adaptations or I guess progression is when you want to actually kind of recover past that. So fully recover from the stimulus, but also get those adaptations on top. If you're not even able to return to your old kind of status quo or performance level, you don't want to be in that kind of place for a long period of time. And Mike Israetel was saying that there's just a set weekly number per week, or that was what was thought previous. Then James Krieger came in and evaluated research, and it's kind of more based on not just the number of how many sets you do in a week, but you also have to take into account how many times you spread that out through the week. Because we don't have a recovery window that's 7 days, that's just the number we kind of made up. So 7 days, like Sunday to Monday, that's kind of well, it'd be Sunday to Saturday, my bad. But those 7 days is like, that's just the kind of thing we made up. It doesn't have any like physiological meaning. So what if our recovery window or cycle is like 48 hours, women's is 55 hours? We don't really know this for certain, but James Krieger kind of evaluated when if you hit 20 sets divided into 3 sessions for the week, or if it was 1 session or 2 sessions, he was seeing like what kind of was having the best response. And after all that, a lot of data was gone over. Definitely I would recommend reading this, probably have the link down below. Pretty much 8 to 12 sets per muscle group in 1 session is going to be like that sweet spot, and that's probably more impactful than your total week sets for the week. So that means probably, and you do want to increase your sets throughout a training block. So probably what you want to do is every time you work chest, probably work from like maybe 6 up to 12 sets for each session, and then work that up throughout, of course, that block. So that's kind of how I'm going about that. The sweet spot was like 8.5 sets per session where the best growth was. So kind of that's probably a good place to start. For people that are more so beginners, a lot of this information is probably unnecessary. Like really like working from like 6 sets per muscle group up to 12 per session. You may not have to complicate it to that extent, like until like you're really eking out like your plus 10 years of training gains, or like when your body's really resistant to growth and you have to do a lot of things correctly. There are some values where it may help, but I think being in that sweet spot of like about 8 sets per session per muscle group and probably getting a good frequency with that, that may be one of the best impacts and probably a simple way to go about your training without overcomplicating it and throwing all these variables in. So, with that being said, what I'm trying to aim for is I'm breaking up my volume into pretty much about 3 sessions. I do an upper-lower split, and I just do the same workouts 3 times. So I make an upper day, a lower day, repeat that 3 times throughout the week for 6 days of training, and then pretty much I just change the rep range slightly. So in the first probably mesocycle, I'm gonna do like 10s, 12s, and 15s for probably the majority of exercises. And then probably the second mesocycle, it will be like maybe 8s, 10s, 12. And then once I get into my strength phase, it's probably gonna be like 3s, 5s, 7s. So that's how I kind of change the rep ranges throughout. But I want to be practicing the same movements, get that skill acquired, and then progressively overload from there. But it also makes it really simple for me to track sets and as they progress. So kind of we talked about frequency and how much kind of sets you want to do in a session. Pretty much if you go over that 12, you may be getting like diminishing returns. It's kind of like you do like 0, 2 sets, 4 sets, 8.5 sets is up here, so 8 to 12 is at the top of the response, like the circle, semicircle, and then like once you do like 30 sets, you're probably not going to get too much growth because you're just doing so much work. It's hard for your body to recover. So probably you're not going to want to go over maybe 12 sets in 1 session for a certain muscle group. So don't do like 15 sets of bench press in 1 session. Probably break that up into 2-3 sessions per the week, and you'll be pretty solid. So that's how I go about this. So I'm just picking 2 exercises pretty much per muscle group for the most part. And what I'm doing for areas that I really want to improve on is I'm adding a little extra frequency, but still keeping it as much as I can in that like 8 to 12 set range per session. So we'll go into pretty much like each muscle group and like what I'm doing. And I do supersets so I can just get a lot of volume into a shorter amount of time. I know it may not make your absolute total work done most effective. You're going to be best off. If you have 8 exercises in your workout, probably best to do them individually. Probably take a full like 2 minutes or so between each one when you're fully recovered and do them. But if you throw in supersets and you make those 8 exercises, you make it instead into 4 supersets, you'll probably cut off like 25% of that time. That's what I benefit from. I really like that. I don't want to have the longest of workouts if I don't have to and take all that time resting. And for my clients especially, I want them to be very efficient when they're in the gym. So that's something I just keep into my training. So we'll talk about upper days. So my 2 chest exercises that I do, bench press, and the other one is dumbbell incline. So bench press, haven't had that in like two blocks, so it's been like 32 weeks or so. And my bench press I thought was limited by like my chest, because I felt that my anterior delts and my triceps were able to take over and kind of hide that weak spot. So what I did over the last 2 training blocks is I got flies, which the only muscle really doing anything is your chest. So that's going to be the limiting factor. So I can grow that weak point and make it stronger. So next time I bring back bench press, my weakest link isn't going to be overshadowed. It got its time to get better, and we'll see if I can get that 405 bench eventually. So bench press is going to be one of those. That's one of those compound movements too. So it's not the best, I guess, like feeler exercise. So I would want to pair that with something where I can get a really good stretch in my chest, focus on that activation. I probably want to do 2 barbell exercises in the same training block. So I'm doing dumbbell incline because I also want a kind of a more incline press to get that upper chest as well. I was considering doing flies, but I would rather, so bench press and flies, because like flies you can isolate the chest a lot better. It can't be overshadowed by like really other muscle groups. I was going to choose that, but I wanted to make sure that I have an exercise to get the upper chest. Don't want to take a whole training block where I'm not really getting an exercise that's going to hit that area. So those are the 2 exercises that I'm going to be doing there, and I pair those up with antagonistic exercises when I do those. So what I do in these workouts is, so with bench press, I'm going to pair that with pen lay rows. Love pen lay rows. That's just pretty much a barbell row, but you let the bar rest on the floor in between reps. Fantastic. The only thing I have to watch out for is my lower back and see if that gets aggravated. So I'm probably just gonna do my best with that, but I've seen really, really big, strong guys, when they do these exercises very effectively and correctly, and not using momentum, they don't really do that much weight. Maybe like 150 to 200 pounds. If you can get up to a pound per pound body weight on pen lay rows, you'll be in a pretty good spot. So pen lay rows, bring those in. It's a horizontal pull. My weak spot is definitely my lats and my mid back, so that's gonna be good. Horizontal rows, depending on how your elbows are like kind of oriented, that's going to depend like what muscles in your back are really going to be hit. So if you're doing something where you're really getting like high elbows and bringing those around, you're going to get that middle back. If you're kind of in the middle, you'll be hitting your lats, as well as you're going to be working like that kind of mid back if you're kind of that 45-degree angle. And then if you're like really tucked into your sides, like kind of like a one arm, single arm, like row with let's say cable, you're going to feel that's pretty much just your lat. You'll really feel that on your lat. So kind of getting a variety of those kinds of pulls, different grips, different kind of horizontals or vertical pulls, you can really kind of hit different areas of your back. But as far as I've read, there's a lot of overlap. It's like you may hit a little bit more percentage of like that mid back versus like width, but I mean there's a lot of, again, overlap. So pen lay rows is what I'm gonna do. I just think like having a row is really good, really all around development. And then the other back movement that I'm going to have on upper days is lat pull down. So I have my horizontal pull, and I have my vertical pull, and I need to grow it back. So lat pull downs, not sure exactly what grip, but it's probably going to be either a wide grip or like a more moderate grip. And then, so we have bench press paired with pen lay rows. The other back movement that I will be having is lat pull downs. So in the second superset, also going to be doing close grip bench press. That's going to be like my tricep exercise. I do know there's a little bit of overlap with your chest, but with bench press being such a compound movement, my chest isn't really isolated there. So a little bit of extra chest activation. It won't be too high or like mess with like overtraining that. Then, so we're going to just go over my first 3 supersets. So bench press, pen lay rows. Second superset, close grip bench press, because I'm already at the bench. So we're going to do close grip with my main tricep exercise we're going to use, and going to superset out with lat pull downs. Third superset, it's going to be dumbbell incline, as we said, so that's my second chest exercise, and dumbbell shrugs. So that's going to be a relatively quick superset. I'm also going to already be at the dumbbells, so I kind of pair things up if they're really easy to work in together. Don't want to be that guy taking up like a barbell and then also like a machine and walking halfway across the gym, so not always easy, but always asked to work in. So those are the first 3 supersets. Then I get into probably these are my like more quicker supersets. So 4, with every exercise, I did say probably getting in between like 8 to 12 sets per muscle group per session is probably going to be what's best. But with arm workouts, they are like your triceps, your biceps are going to be hit with like kind of your other compound movements. I just try to get a little bit of a sprinkle of volume in there, so just probably like 4 sets, but every single day. So I do have spider curls in superset number 4. That's my bicep exercise for that day. And we're going to do paused lateral raises, which I'm very excited for with dumbbells. So that's your middle delt, which is somewhere that you actually have to give a lot of attention and love to, because there's not too much crossover with like your presses where it's going to be hitting that. With like just normal pressing, so I'm doing close grip press, dumbbell incline, we got bench press. There's actually a lot of anterior delt activation there, so I don't need a isolated exercise for that. It's already getting plenty of love. And then we're gonna go to superset number 5, face pull. This one is gonna hit 2 birds with 1 stone. I have a pretty weak mid back. Saw that with my bodybuilding prep. So it's gonna be gonna be very deliberate with the movement, trying to get my middle back activated. It's also gonna be hitting my rear delts as well, which is something for just pressing health. With all that pressing that I'm gonna be doing, anterior delt being activated a lot, it's good to give the rear a little bit of love, and probably you may need a little bit of extra effort to isolate that area and really hit it. You gotta be a little bit more creative. Your anterior delts get hit with everything. So I'm gonna be supersetting face pull, so for middle back and rear delts. I'm gonna superset that with a weighted crunch. So I'm gonna be at the cables, might as well. It's gonna be, the rope's already at a high orientation. So face pulls, and then I'll just go into, again, weighted crunch. And then, not really another superset, but I haven't done much direct ab work. And I think I have well-developed abs from like, my first 3 years did P90X, ab ripper X like every other day. So I think I need to bring that back a little bit if I want them to get to a better point than they are now. So that's pretty much my upper day. So the kind of way that it breaks down to is I have 2 chest dominant exercises. I got 2 really back dominant exercises. So Penley rows, lat pull down. We have my tricep exercise, 1 close grip bench press. We have 1 bicep spider curls. We got my middle delt one, that is gonna be pause lateral raises. We also have dumbbell shrugs, so actually focusing on traps now. That's something I haven't done in the past really. Lost my light. Boom. And then we have face pull for, I guess, the rear delts, and we have 2 ab exercises. So pretty much to the abs, weighted crunch, and then we have the oblique V-up. So the way that I'm gonna be working up my sets from there is probably from the first couple mesocycles, or no, the first microcycle. So mesocycle 6 week, each week is a microcycle. Probably gonna start with like 3 sets per exercise, slowly work that up by like 1 set to 1 set per like session. So that'll be weird. I'll kind of talk about and explain that in a little bit. But let's go into the lower day. So somewhere that I really, again, I want to work on my back a lot. I also want to grow my glutes. So I did throw in a back exercise here, which is in the first superset, chest supported row. And that's going to be with the plate loaded chest supported row. I'm going to do the overhand grip and relatively high elbows to really try to get that mid back. But it's going to be pretty balanced to hit like lats and middle back. So that's going to be superset with the sumo squats, but I'm actually starting with sumo squats and supersetting with the chest supported row. So first exercise is sumo squats. I'm counting this as kind of a glute dominant movement, but it will hit my quads as well. This one I was very influenced by Nicole's coach and my friend Jared Feather. He swears by kind of sumo stance exercises to develop his glutes. And you can check out his Instagram. My man has developed that area. So I'm taking some notes, gonna be trying out the sumo squats. He also highly recommends like sumo deadlifts from a deficit, so just loading 25s instead of 45s to get that deficit. So I'm gonna be trying this out. He actually doesn't value hip thrust that much. He says them probably more of like a secondary or accessory movement in the whole grand scheme of his glute training. So trying this, gonna learn and see sumo squats. Nicole's been trying it. She's seen some games, and also she said sumo squats is her like #1. So sumo squats, gonna be starting that with chest supported rows. That should be fun. So that's my first glute exercise. A little sprinkle of quad activation is gonna be in that too. It's a squat. Hack squats. So superset number 2, hack squats, full quad, very deep stretch in the quad. Love this movement. Got a lot of value from it in this past training block. This is one of the exercises I am carrying over to the next one, just because I've loved it. Get a really good stretch. My back is supported, and you guys know if you're new here, I have some lower back issues from my powerlifting days. So hack squats, we'll be doing that, and pairing that with some extensions, so tricep extensions. So it's probably gonna be like just at the rope and getting some of that. I feel that get a really good feel in my triceps. That's also gonna be carried over for the next block. So those 2 exercises, I don't like carrying exercises 3 blocks in a row. So after that, they're gonna have to go and be swapped. Third superset, prone leg curl. So at my gym, just the prone leg curl is way better than the seated one. But I had the prone and the seated in this last training block, so I do have to switch out one. that may be an exercise I just keep in permanently while I'm at this gym because that's like their best thing for hamstrings. So prone leg curl, and I'm going to superset with calf raises. Usually calf raises I save for the end, but we're going to be hitting that in superset number 3. And they're also, the machines are next to each other. So we already have a glute dominant movement, sumo squats. Hack squats is going to be the quad dominant movement, and then we have hamstrings. I'm looking for 2 exercises for each of those big muscle groups in the lower body. So next up, we're going to get a thrust. Still kind of thinking of it as going to be like a dumbbell thrust. Probably will be some kind of dumbbell thrust. The thrust machine at my gym it's iffy just because getting a pad on like the belt for it is kind of weird, and then setting up a barbell hip thrust just takes a long time. So probably going to go with a dumbbell one, just change it up a little bit. And so that's my second glute dominant movement, and it's my second one, so the thrust I'm less valuing as that sumo squat. So I'm learning with that. It's just an experiment trying this sumo kind of stance for my glute training. But trust in Jared, we trust, man. So in the superset number 4, the hip thrust will be superset with my seated hammer curls. So that's going to be my bicep movement for the day. So already glutes should be pretty much done. Superset number 5, hamstring bridge. Love these. I give these to my clients a lot. Pretty much just find a chair. You're going to lay on your back, put your, you got your hips, your knee, and it's like 90 degrees, and your heel is on the chair. And then pretty much you just kind of like straighten out your hips. You like pretty much thrust forward, like, oh yeah, your hips down here. So you thrust off the ground, and you're like digging your heels, pulling those down into the seat, and you really feel your hamstrings activate. And it's a killer. I give it to my clients a lot. And I was like showing an at-home workout with Nicole's mom for people in China because the coronavirus, and my hamstrings were toast. But if you've never felt your hamstrings work, that is the exercise to start with, and that just really gives you really good, I think the word's proprioception, maybe I'm using that wrong, but you just really get that feeling for like when your hamstrings are engaged. So that's superset number 5, supersetting that with upright rows. That's my middle delt movement. This is something also I'm taking from Renaissance Periodization. Shout out to those guys. Really focusing on using my middle delt for it. So doing it correctly and getting that full stretch in that middle delt. There's no real, some people think upright rows are like dangerous for your shoulders. Any exercise you do in the gym is dangerous, but if you do it correctly, you're gonna be fine. And that's like the main point. So upright rows, we're gonna be careful with that, not throw a ton of weight around, make sure I have it down, and then progressive load from there. Progressive overload. And then superset number 6, it's not even a superset, it's just like a finisher. Super excited for this. This is dumbbell lunge. So me and my assistant coach Brandon, we were talking about like how to add it in. He was like, yeah, dumbbell lunges are more of a finisher. And I was thinking of like maybe putting it more in like the middle or like beginning of my workout, but he's like, that's something where you just want to like kill yourself at the end. It's also cardiovascularly taxing because you are going to be walking a good amount. Each leg gets its pretty much own squat, so that's gonna be a brutal one. That's kind of a good glute exercise, but also it's probably, maybe it's like 50-50 like quad and glute. I think some may say if you take longer steps it's maybe more glute dominant. So I'm counting that one as kind of like that 50-50, and that sumo squat's kind of maybe that's more like 60-40 or 70-30 with like glute to quad. So those two together, mentally I'm like, okay, 50-50, so pretty much I can say like the sumo squats are, we'll say 100% glute, and I'll say like dumbbell lunge is 100% like quads. So that kind of balances things out over time. And I've also noticed that my quads need a little bit less volume, at least my knees do get aggravated with very high volumes anyway. So I just went over my whole training. Hopefully I have some pictures just to make it's very hard to follow. So if I take you through my lower day, so we have sumo squats, chest supported row, superset. Then we go into hack squats, and we have tricep extensions. So two exercises that aren't going to be impeding on each other. I wouldn't really do like a quad exercise and a quad exercise, or like a squat exercise and then like maybe like a glute exercise. Try to like keep things, when one thing's working, the other one isn't. I think it's the best way to go about supersetting without like inhibiting your performance as best you can. So superset number 3, prone leg curls and calf raises. 4 is going to be some kind of thrust, probably a dumbbell thrust, and seated hammer curls. Superset number 5, hamstring bridge, upright row, and then the finisher, dumbbell lunges. I'm excited for those, actually, very excited. So that's how I'm breaking down this workout. So we said we had upper day, we had lower day. I repeat those 3 times a week. Most likely a lot of the exercises will be in like 15s on day 1, so reps of 15. Then day 2 is going to be reps of 12. Day 3 will be reps of 10 per set. So that'll be, so it gets like heavier throughout the week. Then the second mesocycle, I bring those all down about like 2 or 3 reps. And then once we get to the strength block, I try to get out of that 8 to 20 rep range. So then I go like 7 5s, 3s. And then I also bring my sets down. So the way that I'm going to do I didn't break down too well like what muscle groups are going to be hit. So we have, for quads, we're going to be having the hack squats. That is I love that. And pretty much like 50% of the sumo squats and 50% of the dumbbell lunges. So that pretty much makes that 2 exercises there. Then I have my 2 exercises for hamstrings. It's going to be the hamstring bridge, and it's going to be the prone leg curls. And then my glutes. So that's the other big muscle group that I'm focusing on lower days, and that's somewhere I really do want to improve. So we have sumo squats. We actually have thrusts. All right, so we ran out of memory card room because I'm talking way too long. So we're like 25 minutes deep. We'll try to finish this in 6 minutes or so. So the glutes, yeah, dumbbell lunges, the thrusts, and the sumo squat. So that may be like 2.5 exercises technically, because the sumo and the lunge is pretty split with quads. So maybe there's a little extra glute action. And then for arms, we have upright row is middle delt. Just making sure that I do that correctly. And then we have tricep extensions and seated hammer curls. So that's the exercises. So we have like the arm work every day, pretty much going to be like 3 to 6 sets over time throughout the block. And then pretty much all the big muscle groups of the lower body, hamstrings, glutes, quads, those all are getting 2 exercises. Also, there's some calf raises in there because I didn't do calves like my first 5 years of training. So now we're here. Actually, the last 5 years because of powerlifting. I did a little bit in the beginning, and I played basketball. So next thing I want to talk about is a little bit of how we're getting progressive overload throughout the mesocycle and total training block. So intensity is one variable with this, and also set escalation, so set volume. So intensity, I'm going to start from 3 RIR. So intensity is pretty much like how difficult was the set. You have RPE, rate of perceived exertion, or RIR, reps in reserve. Same thing, but flip of a coin, or just 2 sides of a coin. So RPE 9 is you subtract that from 10, you have 1 rep left in the tank. That would be RIR, reps in reserve, of 1. If it's RPE 7.5, that's 2, maybe 3 reps left in the tank. That would be RIR 2 to 3. So pretty much the same thing, the way that I'm going to be progressing this throughout the mesocycles. So they're 6 weeks long for me. Unless I'm feeling very fatigued, then I may take it early. But it's going to be start off with 3 RIR, reps in reserve, for the first week. Then it's going to be 2 weeks at probably the best trade-off of fatigue to total stimulus. So with RIR or just intensity, the trade-offs are how much growth you get from those sets versus how much fatigue do you build up. Sweet spot, probably the best trade-off is around 2 RIR, so 2 reps left in the tank. So you're going to get the majority of the growth that you want from those sets without accumulating too much fatigue. So that's going to be weeks 2 and 3. Then we're going to go to 1 RIR, so 1 rep left in the tank. That's going to be weeks 4 and 5. And that final week, because we're deloading right after, that's going to be pretty much to failure. So 0 to 1 RIR. And then the deload is pretty much going to be pretty easy. Cut sets by 50% and go to like RIR of like 4 or 5. Really easy, trying to do a lot less volume and allow fatigue to dissipate. So that's how I'm going with the intensity. Bring that up, and then at the deload, you bring it down, and then you bring it back up the next mesocycle. During the strength block, I started that off with a deload, and then probably also go for 3 weeks. It'll be week 1, 3 RIR, then 2 RIR, and then 1 RIR. So the other thing that we go with progressive overload, so with that intensity as it escalates, because I'm like 10 years deep into training, or a lot of this periodization is for like advanced trainees, you don't really hit PR so often. So that's a way to get progressive overload, because if you're upping the intensity, you're going to use more weight. So if I have 3 reps left in the tank with 200, probably have 2 reps left in the tank with like 210. So you're going to be able to increase weight over time. Fun stuff. So that's set escalations is the other thing. So this is actually like increasing your volume by just doing more sets, so more bouts of volume. So the way that this is going to increase is everything a little bit more confusing, but all my exercises from the start is going to be 3 sets per superset or exercise. And then probably that next week, So I do my upper and lower days 3 times a week. So the first upper day, the first lower day, those will get bumped up to 4 sets per superset. So that pretty much gives like all muscle groups a bump of 2 sets for that week. So every week I had 2 sets. Then after that first deload, I'll bring it back to probably back a set or 2, probably like a set per muscle group. So the way that this will like take place is we'll start with like 3 supersets for everything. Then the first upper and lower days will all go to 4, and then upper day and lower day 2 will go to 4, and then throughout. So probably after that mesocycle, this is quick math, but I'm probably wrong, but it'll be something like 5 supersets for some things. So after that first deload, probably bring it down to like 4 for everything. Then work that up to 6 on some supersets. So a lot of volume is going to be going down, but once I hit like that 6 mark, it's about that upper limit of what appears to be optimal by James Krieger's meta-analysis. So that'll be like 12 sets per exercise. Except how I wrote this, kind of glutes may get a little bit extra love. So we'll see if those get bigger. Hopefully they do. So that's pretty much the other way that we're going to be increasing overall volume. And then once we get to the strength block, bring it down to like 3 sets per exercise. So pretty much close to maintenance volume or just pretty low volume. So yeah, that's pretty much the majority of things. I know I've rambled for a long time. You have to really be into or really enjoy the science of training. This is my we all like read the same science pretty much, or like research, but everyone develops their own opinion and strategies based on the same kind of information that's out there. So this is kind of the way that I'm digesting and implementing what I've read. So main things that I want to kind of tell to you guys. I mean, first, the resources, James Krieger's meta-analysis, definitely read that. Renaissance periodization, especially if you want to learn more about a lot of the factors that I mentioned. How Much Should You Train by Renaissance Periodization. I think Dr. Mike Isertel wrote some of that. The recovery book that they have, and then he's also releasing the hypertrophy like textbook that's coming out, which I will devour mentally. Very excited for that. So those are some of the resources, but the main point I want to make is you don't have to be this complicated. You do have to do a lot of things correctly and like optimally if you want to make gains past like year 5 or year 10. Chill out, bros. Dog is doing stuff. So this is why, like, I'm 10, 11 years deep into training, so I got to do a lot of things correctly and try to like optimize what I'm doing to see little gains. If you're your first couple of years, you don't have to go into like this great detail or depth, increasing your sets as much. You may just want to like hang out in those like optimal ranges, like 8.5 sets per muscle group per session and get a good amount of frequency. Probably take some deloads here and there, your strength blocks, rotate those in. But you don't really have to be like super crazy in depth, take like 3-4 hours to write up a training block. And you can pretty much stay to a lot of the tried and true movements and just get stronger. But I can't say that getting a lot of these variables correct or in place won't help you grow a little bit faster. So one of the great examples from one of my clients, he's only like a year into training, Carlos Lozada. Here's his transformation. He's only a year deep into training, and the majority of the time was spent in a deficit as well. So we only did like a 12-week surplus in the middle of things to kind of break up like a long-term deficit. I think he lost near 100 pounds, and I think like 50 or 60 working with me. So he's been crushing it, but that shows how much muscle you can acquire if you get a lot of your training right. And I can't even say that our nutrition has been perfect because we only bulked for like 12 weeks and he's been the majority of the time in a deficit. So definitely try to get some of the variables correct, and you're gonna grow pretty nicely. But you don't have to go super complicated. You'll be able to grow in general from a lot of things. Probably say what supersedes a lot of this information is also get your nutrition right. Sufficient protein intake, prioritize your time in a slow calorie surplus, and gain weight very slowly. But this is a very long, bless you, this is a very long video. I destroyed one of our memory cards because it just went on for a while. So leave your questions down below. I'm sure I'm going to get the question like, why is this so complicated, man? Like, just bench and squat and get really strong. And it's like, you're right, but after 11 years, there's a little bit more data out there that we can really implement and optimize and get more for our training, because I want to keep growing into my 40s and hopefully like maybe my 50s. But I'll be training 6 days a week. I'm considering getting into a little Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu maybe on day 7. watched an MMA fight, and now I'm like really interested. So we'll see about that. If I implement that, you guys will definitely hear about it. But thank you guys so much for watching. Please went over a bunch of stuff, word vomited a lot. Leave some questions down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe if you haven't. Keep it flexible. Bam. I'm out.